Racing to the 2022 Breeders' Cup, and this time we get an update for Monday, October 17th. We're going to be taking a look at the Classic Speed Figure progression, but first off, let's get an update on the latest news. Coming over from Europe is Jadumi. We'll be running in the Turf Mile. Kinross, the Champions Day Sprinter winner, he's going to come over and stretch out to that Turf Mile. Adayar going to the Turf, and Tyler's Tribe, the pride of Prairie's Meadows, continues to train forwardly for the Juvenile Turf Sprint. The son of Sharp Azteca is 5 for 5 in his career. Now, when we take a look at the Triple Crown races, one of the things I like to do with 2-year-olds and with early 3-year-olds until they run 5-6 races is take a look at the speed figure progression. It kind of combines with the days away to show you which horses may be peaking up to a big effort. Now, I'm going to do this for the Breeders' Cup Classic. We're also going to be taking a look at the juvenile races with the speed figure progression later on this week. But right now, let's take a look at that classic field. Still a couple of horses are considering the Breeders' Cup Classic. We've got Cyberknife, who worked out over the weekend. He may be running in the Dirt Mile. And Slowdown Andy also considering either the Breeders' Cup Classic or the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile for trainer Doug O'Neill. Of course, Slowdown Andy has had a long campaign, but he fits competitively at that grade 2 level. I'm not sure at 10 furlongs at the grade 1 level how Slowdown Andy does, but the rest of the horses hit their workout. We've got Happy Saver, Hot Rod Charlie, Rich Strike still considering the Clark Handicap or the Breeders' Cup Classic. Let's take a look at those speed figures. And again, what we're trying to do here is trying to see which horse is maybe coming up to a career top effort or going to match their career top effort based on their recent speed figures and also how many days away and how they're training up to the race. Now, we've got the main Breeders' Cup Classic contenders lined up here. Flightline in his 5th career start. At the top, you have career start number, and then on the left-hand side, you have the horse. So Flightline has run a 105 in his career debut on the Brisnet scale. Then he ran a 117 in an allowance race, a 114 in the Malibu, a 108 in the Met Mile, and then he went back up to a 117 in his most recent start. He's only got 5 career races, and really up until that 5 or 6 career races, horses are eligible to improve and kind of improve dramatically. They can pick up a 8, 9, 10 point speed figure improvement on that Brisnet scale. Now, Taba's another one with only 5 lifetime races. He got a 113 in the Pennsylvania Derby. Taba with just 5 lifetime starts. That was after a 103 in his 4th career race. That was the Haskell, and kind of brought him back up into a new progression off that layoff after the Kentucky Derby. Now, Olympiad won his most recent race. He stretched out to 10 furlongs in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. He ran a 101 in the Brisnet scale. His best speed figure was a 109. That was in the Stephen Foster. But if you look together this year, overall, he's put together a nice campaign. He started off maybe at some of those shorter distances, a mile to a mile and 1/8. That seems to be where his better speed figures are, in that 104 to 109 range. And I'm just not sure that Olympiad can really get close to that 110 level that is needed to win on the Brisnet scale, a grade 1 race at 10 furlongs. Meanwhile, Life is Good went back to a 106 in his most recent race. That was the Woodward Stakes. He ran a 113 on the Brisnet scale in the Whitney, and then he kind of had a 108 and a 108 before Dubai in the Pegasus, and then after Dubai on his first race back in the John Nehrude, although his Beyer speed figure in that sprint race was a little bit higher. Another horse to look at is Rich Strike. He had a 104 and then a 99. Of course, that 104 was in the Travers. In his most recent loss, losing a head bob to Hot Rod Charlie, he got a 99. And Hot Rod Charlie, again, 2 back, a 110 on the Brisnet scale, regressed a little bit to a 99. Now, I like to factor in the day's rest also. This shows you the pattern of their speed figure and their days between starts. Usually what you like to see is a gap, and then you'll see a comeback that kind of pairs their previous figure and then a new improvement. So what I'm looking for is a 70 to 80 day gap. That's a gap. Then you get your improvement in that 2nd or 3rd race back. Now, Flightline is very unusual because he's had a lot of days off between all of his starts, and It's hard to really grasp, except he did run on an 84-day rest, a new career top in the Pacific Classic, going 10 furlongs. He ran on 84 days rest. Before that, he had 167 days rest from the Malibu all the way up to the Met Mile. Meanwhile, Happy Saver had that break. Then he's been sitting right around 60 days. And that's where you start to see a lot of these horses over the last few years start to see that 50 to 70 day gap. And then really you can prime them up, especially earlier on in that career when they get that 40 to 50 day gap. But again, these are older horses. You don't see the patterns because once they get after 6 or 7 starts or in their 4-year-old season, they kind of are who they are. And you don't see those big jump ups in Beyer or Breeders Speed Figures. Taba, you know, he's had a couple little gaps after the Kentucky Derby. They tried to rush him on 28 days rest into the Derby. Then he's had a nice gap of 77 and 63 races. Now the Beyer Speed Figures show Flightline with a 126 speed figure. That's the highest speed figure at 1 mile or longer in 2022. Epicenter has a 112. Olympiad has a 111. Life is Good, a 110, and Taba with a 109. Now, the 2nd through 5th place horses are all kind of bunched together. Flightline has that big edge. And if they run races on paper, this is what that looks like. I don't know if you've ever looked at a Beyer speed figure chart, but on the top shows the distance of the race, and then on the left-hand side shows how many lengths they won by. So either a neck, half a length, 3/4 of a length, or 1 length. So that 14-point gap between Flightline and Epicenter, if you go to the top, you look at 10 furlongs, which is 1.25 miles, then you go to the left-hand side and you go, you see 14 points, which is what I've highlighted there. Basically, this speed figure chart, if you just extrapolate it from the raw numbers, not accounting for pace or track or anything like that, you're going to look at about a 9 to 10 length margin here in this race for Flightline. That is how much of a gap, that 14-point speed figure. And of course, he won his last race over 19 lengths in the Pacific Classic. That is why Flightline is going to be heavily favored. If you believe in the Beyer speed figures, on the Breeders scale, it's more like a 5 to 6 length margin, but normally you just don't see this in lightly raced horses or horses at this grade 1 talent level, somebody just towering over the rest of the horses. He's got his fewest days in between starts, but still plenty of time. It's only a 6th career race, and the pedigree being by Tapit. Now, he's a little bit high strung. He does get a little bit keyed up early on in his races. That's really the only thing. He ran that 22 second quarter in the Pacific Classic. Now the recap, overall I kind of put this all together. You got Taba still improving, Epicenter, the big Travers race, but now he's had a little bit of time off and going back-to-back 10 furlongs may dull his speed a little bit. Hot Rod Charlie and Olympiad, I just don't see the room for improvement. They're going to kind of run their races. They're going to run their 108, 109 Breeders. They're going to run their 103, 104 Beyer. If that's good enough, they can win, but the other horses would have to regress. Life is Good. He seems to have peaked. I'm not sure he's going to get better. I'm not sure he's a 10 furlong horse, but his top figure puts him right in that mix. But again, he's got speed. So does he go to that lead? How do him and Flightline? That's going to really be the matchup in the Breeders' Cup Classic. So the Breeders' speed figures are out. The Beyer speed figures are out. According to on paper, it's a rout for Flightline, a 9 to 10 length win. We've got a lot more to discuss about this race in the next couple of weeks. What are some of your early thoughts on the speed figures for the Breeders' Cup Classic as we get you ready for the Breeders' Cup 2022?